Who's ready for some Saturday morning cartoons? I know I am. In fact, I'm going to release this episode on a Saturday morning for full authenticity. Even though the videos stay up indefinitely and, you can watch them whenever you want. You know what? Watch this only on a Saturday morning. Actually, no, that'd be bad for the video. I don't think I thought this through very well. Let's just get into the review. So Saturday Morning All-Star Hits, or SMASH for short, because you gotta say it awesome like, was a comedy series released on Netflix in December of 2021. So I'm a little bit late on this one, but I don't think a lot of people really know about this one. In fact, I didn't know about it until a whole bunch of people told me about it, so here we are. So the show is basically a parody of Saturday morning cartoon blocks that you'd see in like the late 80s and early 90s. So it had a whole bunch of cartoons which were all parodies, as well as two radical hosts for the kids. You know, the kind that network executives think kids like. To be fair, they're not always wrong. So easily the best part of the entire show is seeing the parodies of all the different cartoons, and I'll give them credit. They went with some obvious choices, but a lot of non-obvious choices. So let's just go through them real quick. So one of the more prominent ones was Strongimals, which is basically a parody of like Ninja Turtles and all the other shows that tried to be Ninja Turtles at the time, with maybe a little bit of Battle Beasts. If anybody remembers Battle Beasts. How come that didn't have an animated series? Then there's Create-A-Critters, which is kind of a parody of Care Bears with maybe a little bit of Shirt Tales mixed in because they're supposed to be like a secret. And maybe some Alvin and the Chipmunks as well, because they have a human friend who's named David, who kind of looks like David from Alvin and the Chipmunks. And one thing to remember is that this is an adult show, or at least it's meant to be a more mature comedy show. So a lot of these parodies also have some really messed up stuff happening for them. Like Randy, which is a parody of Denver the Last Dinosaur. So while Denver the Last Dinosaur was like a fun dinosaur friend who hung out with his bodacious buds there, Randy is dealing with like alcoholism and depression and like relationship issues. So a lot of the humor of the show takes, something cute and innocent and then juxtaposes it to something really messed up. So that's the kind of thing you can expect from this. There was one called Little Bruce, which was a show created by a comedian who was like, hey, let me tell you what it was like growing up and stuff like that. So it was kind of a parody of stuff like Bobby's World or Life with Louie. This one gets a little too real though, because while it's cute, he's like, oh, I don't like being in school and stuff, and the live action actor is constantly interrupting and say, hey, that was kind of rough and stuff like that. But the whole thing ends up with him trying to deal with his parents' divorce, and the whole thing just kind of comes to a screeching halt. And the comedian guy is like, I don't want to do this anymore, and then he walks off. I think my favorite one though has to be Pro Bros, which is a parody of Pro Stars, which was a show starring Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, and Bo Jackson, famous sports stars at the time, even though they didn't voice the characters, but they were involved with the show. Basically, they were like crime fighters or like mystery solvers and stuff, and it was fun and silly. Pro Bros, on the other hand, takes things to a different level, because the two guys that they follow aren't like big athletes or big stars or anything like that. They're the less talented younger brothers of more famous athletes. So there'd be a lot of times where they would show up and they were like, oh, you're the brothers of those other guys. And they're like, yeah, what's that supposed to mean? Yeah, we're important too. We're good for the team. So there's lots of running jokes like that. The reason why I like this one so much though is because it was established as a more mature cartoon by the parody guy that created it. And just randomly in any episode, like, it'll just burst out into gratuitous violence. like they'll be trying to stop this guy, and out of nowhere, someone will just pull out a gun and start shooting. I probably shouldn't laugh at that, but like the abruptness of it really like gets you with that. So I'll definitely give them props for picking some less obvious stuff to do a parody of. For example, there was an episode that parodied Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, which was a TV special that starred like cartoon characters from like all the different studios, like Disney and Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera, and like Deke, and just like all these characters came together. It was supposed to be like an anti-drug special. And I assume it worked because I haven't seen any drugs in a while, so we'll just assume this was a good thing. But the one that they did in this, they had like a bunch of the characters we've seen in previous episodes, and they brought in a couple other ones, and it was basically the same thing. It was like they're trying to like stop this guy because there was this parody. Parody is going to be said a lot in this, by the way. So there was this parody of like parent groups that don't want their kids to say "shut up." So they created this special to like teach kids not to say "shut up" instead of drugs. I really enjoyed that because that's a fun thing to parody. I always wondered like what something like this would look like, nowadays, but maybe that's for the best. But I did really enjoy that one. The one that really got me though was they did a parody of Legend of the Hawaiian Slammers. So this is something I actually reviewed on Cartoon Clip Show a while back. It was an animated pilot that tried to turn Pogs, the little milk cap things, into cartoons. And it didn't really get past this, but it is kind of a fascinating piece of our pop culture. And there was an episode where the host guys went to Hawaii and they learned about this game that the kids play with rubber bands or whatever. And then later in the series, we saw they try to do an animated show based on that. And what killed me, though, was that it was basically beat for beat this. Like, not even, like, it was short, but, like, all the same things that happened in this happened in that episode. So I, again, respect for picking something very less obvious. And I guess nobody really cares enough about this to say, hey, you stole our idea, we're going to sue you. So I suppose they're safe. The voice cast for this is kind of all over the place, too, because they had some big-name celebrities doing voices like Paul Rudd and Emma Stone. And they had a bunch of like famous comedians, too, like Nathan Fielder. Nathan Fielder, that guy. But they did get a lot of era-appropriate voice actors for this as well. Maurice LaMarche was in it, who's always great. Cree Summer did a couple of voices, and again, she's too also really great. They got Frank Welker to voice a villain, though. So there you go. It doesn't get much more authentic than that. They had some other segments in this as well. They had like commercials for toys and movie trailers and other stuff like that. They also had little bits and pieces of like home movies. And I think this whole thing was presented as somebody, watching a VHS recording of this that like taped over some home movies, I guess. So you get like these little like split seconds of like someone hanging out by the pool or someone in a house or something like that. And it did make me wonder if any of that had any like significance, because I don't know, maybe ever since I used to watch Gravity Falls, I've been looking at things like little bits of things that happen. I'm like, does that mean something? Is that code for something? Let me write that down. I don't think it does, but it was kind of interesting to see. There was also news segments too, and a lot of them involved this celebrity who was involved in the disappearance and possibly murder of some other people. And I think this whole thing was supposed to be a parody of the O.J. Simpson trial. And they kind of had, a lot of the same things you saw with the O.J. Simpson trial. Like, they had the chase scene, and they had, like, his court appearances and stuff like that. What a weird thing to reference. The hosts of the show are Skip and Trebor, who are these totally awesome dudes, They got, like, long blonde hair, and they talk like this. Radical! They're supposed to be twins, and they're both played by comedian Kyle Mooney, who not only plays them, but plays several other characters in this, both live action and doing voices on the cartoon shows. And what's crazy is that he plays several characters, and oftentimes several of those characters are on camera at once. Like 2 or 3 characters that he plays are interacting with each other on screen. So big respect to him. He had a lot of weight to carry. There's also a story arc in this too, because Skip actually does a voice on the Strongimals, like one line. He just has one line in the show, and he was super excited about it. And then, it happens, and he's like, maybe I made a big deal over nothing. And then it kind of blows up into this whole thing where he gets really popular, and he becomes more involved in the show. He's in more episodes. They even end up changing the name of the show to Skip and the Strongimals. So he kind of becomes like their human sidekick, which a lot of shows like that had. And, you know, he got an inflated ego and he started doing movies and thinking he was better than doing the show. And he left Trebor behind to handle the show by himself. So it's kind of one of those plot lines. So I did really like this show. I think maybe I wanted to laugh at it a little bit more. There were definitely a lot of funny moments in it, but there were times when I feel like maybe, you know, the parodies went on a little too long. Like, the Randy show was like, okay, we get it, he's depressed, and there's like 4 episodes of that, so it got a little tiresome at times. Plus, you know, the obvious joke of taking something innocent and making it messed up was a little bit overused in this. I think I definitely enjoyed the parodies the most, or at least seeing, you know, what they're going to reference next and how they're going to spin it so that it turns into a comedy show. I wonder why I really enjoyed the parodies of this show a lot, of these 80s and 90s TV shows and toys and stuff. I'm still looking for help. I am also wondering, like, exactly who is this intended for? Me, I guess. Specifically me. I will say, as someone who sees himself as a connoisseur of weird and obscure 80s and 90s cartoons, that I definitely did have a good time watching it, so I suppose that's something. You can check it out on Netflix if you're interested. I don't know if there's going to be any more of it, though. It is listed as season 1 on a lot of different sites. I don't know how they're going to continue this, though, considering how the show ended, so we'll see about that. I won't spoil anything, but if they do continue it, it'll probably be something completely different, but we'll wait and see. What it is as it is still pretty good, though. But that's all I got for Saturday Morning All-Star Hits. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it, and which of the parodies was your favorite. My name is Rob, and have a totally awesome day!